Rock God is Stone Cold. The Hellraiser is back.
Here we go. Evolution of the Shield.
John Cena versus the Showstopper.
Hulk Hogan and The Rock in the same ring.
You will never take my place at the head of the table.
Undertaker with a Hell's Gate submission. Oh my God! What?
My God, Michaels just kicked Cena's head off.
The Monday Night Wars have come to WrestleMania.
It'll be The Rock. It'll be Austin one-on-one.
Third and five to the Undertaker.
Do you believe in miracles?
The streak is over.
What's up, guys, and welcome back to Rivalries on the WWE podcast on this Friday, June 10th, as we inch closer and closer towards the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. And to be sure, it is not shaping up to be a very significant pay-per-view. And ultimately, as I'm sure many of you guys know and believe, that this will likely just be a small stepping stone on the road to SummerSlam, where we've all heard the rumors, right? Lashley versus Lesnar, and possibly Reigns for returning John Cena. So I really do think that Hell in a Cell is going to come and go without having any real impact on the WWE landscape. But as always, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about rivalries. And this week we will be going back to the year 2015 that spilled all the way into 2018 with Roman Reigns against Brock Lesnar. And the big part about this, I think, the biggest part about this rivalry and this program is that it was the first ever main event level rivalry for Roman Reigns as a babyface, or as a whole, right? Because going back to 2015, the Shield had just disbanded, not even 7 or 8 months prior. And when they disbanded, it was clear from the outset that Roman Reigns was their guy. And Dean Ambrose was going to be the mid-card babyface, Seth Rollins was going to be the main event heel, and they were going to push Roman Reigns as the main event level babyface. And early on, it worked. I remember I went to a Monday Night Raw in August of 2014. And let me tell you, Roman Reigns was getting a hell of a lot of cheers. And people were really behind him, because they were letting him grow organically. They were letting him naturally go off in his post-Shield run and just bond with the audience. And as much as people may deny this, when the Shield was around in its original inception, people often gravitated to Roman Reigns because he did have that look. I think many thought that Ambrose would be the big level heel to come out of it because he was the one often doing the talking. And for a large part of their initial run, he came off as the leader. Seth Rollins was the high flyer, and Roman Reigns was that presence. So it only made sense that they would try to make Roman Reigns, for lack of a better terms, the guy right after they broke up the Shield. And sure enough, they did. But in classic Vince McMahon and WWE creative fashion, they kind of pushed the envelope too hard. They kind of started insisting a bit too much with Roman Reigns and forcing it down our throats. And by the time the Royal Rumble came around, it seemed like the outcome was all but certain, right? And sure enough, when the Rumble came down to the final three of Roman Reigns, Kane, and The Big Show, and we later found out Rusev was involved, we got the ever so obvious answer that we knew that at that point WWE was going to give us.
Giant choke slam. Oh my God.
If you smell is
Wait a minute. What? Oh my God. The Rock. The Rock is in Philly. The Rock's at the Rumble. Wow. The Rock laying a smackdown. The Rock is here. Take it out, Big Show.
most electrifying man in sports entertainment.
King, here it comes. Rusev's in this. Rusev gets his own spear. I'm looking back. Rusev was never eliminated. Rusev is still in this match. What? Rusev entered at number 15. And looking back on my notes, I thought he was gone. No, Rusev was never eliminated. Well, wait a minute. But now he is. Roman Reigns is going to WrestleMania. The 2000 Royal Rumble champion, The Rock, and the 2014 Royal Rumble champion, Roman Reigns. Look at this sight.
So that night will forever go down as the night that not even The Rock could get Roman Reigns over with the crowd as his babyface character. And man, oh man, that's something to say, right? That one of the biggest stars of all time, The Rock, cannot get a good cheer and crowd reaction for Roman Reigns. And it was such an anticlimactic ending, right? Because after the initial pop for The Rock's music hitting and him coming out and it being a big attraction, the crowd let it set in a bit that, oh no, Roman Reigns is going to win, someone that we absolutely want nothing to do with as a main event competitor right now. And then Rusev jumps back in from being outside the ring for a handful of minutes. You know, he gets an initial pop because people think there's that, you know, that slight chance that it might not be Roman Reigns. And then sure enough, Roman Reigns conquers him over, throws him over the top rope, and you have such a weird dynamic because one side of the crowd, or not even one side of the crowd, just half of the crowd's feelings are just like, oh man, we're so stoked to see The Rock, one of the biggest of all time, you know, 7-time WWE champion, you know, leading man in Hollywood. But then the other half of themselves know that, oh my God, this means that we're getting this ultra corporate vanilla Roman Reigns to main event the biggest show of all time, or the biggest show that WWE has to offer. And what happens here is that they go on a month and a half, 2-month long crusade to try and save face for Roman Reigns, of them trying to make him come off as a legitimate badass. And I remember that came when him and Brock did like that one-on-one sit-down interview shortly after the Royal Rumble. And, you know, they had that tug of war over the WWE Championship. And even now, looking back more so in hindsight, it looks even better and more brilliant now because Paul Heyman is with Roman Reigns. But you remember that famous quote by Paul Heyman to Roman Reigns saying that you're the right guy at the right place at the wrong time. And obviously, we can't give WWE too much credit, but that turned into amazing long-term booking. Obviously, they had no idea that 6.5 years later down the road, they would pair Heyman with Roman Reigns and play off that once infamous quote if you looked at it from a Roman Reigns perspective. But at that time, they were trying so desperately to put Roman Reigns, that is, on par with Brock Lesnar. And now you got to look at it from where Brock was at this time, because Brock Lesnar was coming off of, you know, arguably the most dominant 6 months of his career. You know, he squashed John Cena at WrestleMania not 6 months prior to become the undisputed WWE World Champion. And then he was the one who introduced the common look that we know now as the WWE Championship. He was the first guy to don that style of and version of the belt. And he went on to successfully defend his WWE Championship in a triple threat match at that very same Royal Rumble against Seth Rollins and John Cena. And Brock Lesnar had not lost a match in almost 2 calendar years at this point. The last time he had lost a match was to Triple H at WrestleMania 29, leading into WrestleMania 31. So not only are you trying to build Roman Reigns as an amazing counterpart to Brock Lesnar and put him on equal footing, but you have Brock Lesnar you have booked as an unstoppable monster for the preceding 24 months. Like, not 12 months prior to Roman Reigns winning that Royal Rumble, you had Brock Lesnar defeat The Undertaker at WrestleMania 30 and end the streak. So you just had Brock Lesnar on this meteoric rise as a heel, and for all his time in WWE, that run he had from mid 2013 to early 2015 may have been the most dominant we had seen at that point and have seen since. So they get into WrestleMania, and what is, in my opinion, one of the best WrestleManias of all time, certainly in the last 15 to 20 years. You have Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns go into the main event, and a crowd that is really not so much rejecting the match, because unlike a lot of people, and specifically hardcore fans say, I enjoy Brock Lesnar's style of matches, and he's a very underrated worker. And a lot of casual fans love Brock Lesnar. The casual fan looks for a guy like Brock Lesnar on a card to make the decision on whether or not he's going to take a peek at the product. So you get in, and Brock Lesnar's doing his classic, moveset and just destroying Roman Reigns with suplexes and clotheslines and whatnot. And then Roman Reigns starts to mount a comeback. And the initial crowd vibe that you got at the beginning of this match starts to change to intrigue, because although they're rejecting Roman Reigns as the babyface and the challenger and believed by many to be the ultimate victor in this match, they start to get drawn in with what truly was a fantastic wrestling match and main event. But just as we're getting to the end of this, in my opinion, very underrated WrestleMania bloodbath and brutal physical bout, the unexpected takes place.
She's at 5. Who can capitalize? Heyman screaming, cover him! Turning point of the match. What the hell? What on earth? This is brilliant. Seth Rollins. This is brilliant. Mr. Money in the Bank. What the hell? Are you kidding me? I didn't know this. I have no idea. I mean, it's Mr. Money in the Bank, but I mean, wait a minute.
Ladies and gentlemen, Seth Rollins is cashing in his Money in the Bank. Therefore, this will now be a triple threat match.
A triple threat match? What? What the hell? Rollins knocks Reigns out of the ring. Seth Rollins now turning his attention to Lesnar. Seth Rollins is one curb stomp away from being the WWE World Heavyweight Champion. Rollins going for the curb stomp. Here it is. Curb stomp. The future is now. Seth Rollins. Check it out, Reigns. Seth is going to finish him. Taking no chances here at all. Look right at the curb stomp. Lesnar picked him out of the air. Reigns with a spear. A wicked spear. Curb stomp on Reigns. Covered by Rollins. Rollins with the title. Rollins with the title. Wait a minute. Seth Rollins with the title. Are you kidding me?
And the new WWE World Heavyweight Champion, Seth Rollins.
First time in WrestleMania history, someone's casting Money in the Bank and walking out. The WWE World Heavyweight Champion, Seth Rollins. He stole one. Rollins with the heist of the century. Brilliant. Brilliant. Seth Rollins is the WWE World Heavyweight Champion. I cannot believe my eyes.
So Seth Rollins is kind of the first thing you think of when you look back and ponder about the Roman Reigns Brock Lesnar rivalry in 2015, because this is how it culminated. They do this big build to WrestleMania and this, presented epic clash between the biggest heel and biggest monster in the company over the prior 24 months and the big up-and-coming star that you can tell WWE is behind. And it ends with a cash-in by a rising young heel. in one of the most sleazy and brilliant booking decisions we've ever seen in the company. And going in, I had a thought that they may do this. And to be honest, it may be WWE's best booking decision in the last generation, because they saved themselves from a fan backlash. Because you have to think that Roman Reigns was not going to be able to lose that match clean. Like, they were not going to have Roman Reigns just lose flat out to Brock Lesnar after the 6 months of building him and protecting him and only giving him wins. But you knew that the fans were going to reject it. And then if you just make Roman Reigns win the championship clean and you have that backlash, then where does that leave you? And the thing is that we could pat them on the back for not, making and going ahead with a decision that the fans would have surely revolted from. But as we talked about in last week's Rivalries episode, Triple H and Roman Reigns clashed in a match the very next year, and WWE made that very same mistake. And you could make the case that they rejected Triple H and Roman Reigns way more. And actually, now that I think about it, it's not even a comparison, that they rejected Reigns and Triple H way more than they did Lesnar and Roman Reigns, because we had just got to see another year of this Roman Reigns vanilla, overly simplified and just dull character marinate and just really just not get out of the main event scene for a lot of that year. And we just knew that he was kind of like the corporate pick. And you make this decision focusing back in on Brock and Roman that kind of protects themselves from making Brock look weak and making Roman come out being rejected as champion. And I think in their mind, they said, okay, we're going to buy a little more time here. So over the following next 12 months, Brock goes away, actually gets on screen, of course, suspended the very next night on Monday Night Raw. And then he goes away until SummerSlam. He comes back to challenge Seth Rollins for the championship. The Undertaker interferes in that match, and him and The Undertaker have a series of matches that takes them all the way, I think, until Hell in a Cell in 2015. That kind of puts a close to that book of Brock and Undertaker. And then from Roman Reigns' perspective, during 2015, you have him feud with Bray Wyatt right through the summer. And then as you got into the spring, or the fall that is, you had him actually become the number one contender to Seth Rollins' championship. And as I reviewed on the last episode of Rivalries, he wins the championship, goes on to face Triple H at the following WrestleMania. And if you see a pattern here, is that Roman Reigns was going in one direction and Brock was going in a completely other direction. And we actually did not see them cross paths for about 3 years, because WrestleMania season in 2016, Brock versus Ambrose, Reigns versus Triple H. And then in late 2016, upon the return of Bill Goldberg, you have them rekindle the rivalry almost right out of the gate of Goldberg returning, of Brock versus Goldberg, that took them all the way to WrestleMania 33 in the Universal Championship match in Orlando in March or April of 2017. Roman Reigns at this time has a run in 2016 with the championship, drops the belt. Then upon the rebirth of the brand split, he feuds on and off with Rusev over the United States Championship. He feuds on and off with Kevin Owens for the Universal Championship. And it eventually leads to him building to a match with The Undertaker at WrestleMania in 2017 in Orlando. And it was right around early 2018 when you started to see them heading back towards the Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar program that we always knew they planned to revisit, because they crossed paths a few times in 2017, most notably at the Fatal 4-Way match at SummerSlam in 2017. Actually, just a crazy, brutal match between those two, along with Samoa Joe and Braun Strowman. It was never a direct rivalry. You had Samoa Joe kind of go with Brock Lesnar, Braun Strowman go with Brock Lesnar, kind of like a cup of coffee between Roman Reigns and Brock, and then Brock moved almost directly back out of the picture. And then he came back for the Royal Rumble season after defeating, AJ Styles in the champion versus champion match at Survivor Series in 2017. He comes back for Royal Rumble for a triple threat match between Braun and Kane. He predictably retains, and it was right around 2018 that they started building back towards Roman Reigns versus Braun Strowman, that you just know that Vince McMahon was just itching to get back on the train tracks after they had kind of derailed it a bit following WrestleMania in 2015. So Roman Reigns wins the number one contenders match at the Elimination Chamber in 2018, and sure enough, he goes up against Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 34 for the Universal Championship. And I thought they were for sure going to pull the trigger here on Roman Reigns winning the Universal Championship, because it had been quite a while at this point since Roman Reigns had held the world title. And the last time he had held it was when he dropped it to Seth Rollins at the Money in the Bank pay-per-view in 2016 in June. So you were just about 19 months removed from Roman Reigns holding a main championship in WWE. And given it was his second crack at Brock Lesnar and failing to capitalize on his first opportunity, albeit with interference from Seth Rollins, you had to think that this was going to be the time that they pulled the trigger, put the championship back on Roman Reigns, and end Brock Lesnar's 12-month long reign at this point. But when we got to the end of the match and started to play out of this brutal, heavy match, as we have become accustomed to in matches involving these two competitors, more of an unpredictable ending kind of played out.
Check out by Brock at 2. It's like Roman saw the red on his hands coming from his own forehead, and it woke Roman up.
Now Roman Reigns is a mess.
He's having to blink it out. He's realizing now it's everywhere. It's that Samoan bloodline that Roman fights for so proudly.
And look at Roman right in the face of Lesnar, taunting, challenging the champion. Reigns again.
Oh no.
Lesnar. F5. Lesnar to retain on Reigns. Got it. Brock Lesnar.
Here's your winner and still the Universal Champion, Brock Lesnar.
The reign continues.
Unbelievable.
Brock Lesnar is still Universal Champion.
Roman Reigns fought like hell, but could not conquer the conqueror.
So just when you thought that they were going to book a Hulk Hogan-esque comeback by Roman Reigns and almost, for lack of better terms, hulking up when he had gotten busted open, Brock Lesnar hits him with a 6th F5 on the match, leaving him a bloody mess, that is, and gets the 1, 2, 3. And it was pretty crazy because by all accounts, the rumor is that they made this a last-minute booking decision and changed the outcome of the match. And there's that infamous clip of Brock Lesnar walking through Gorilla following the outcome of this match and throwing the championship at Vince McMahon because he was so pissed off that it was done on such short notice. And I don't know if you guys heard in the background, but leading up to the culmination and the finish of this match, the crowd was actually chanting, "This is awful," and "This is boring." And it was very telling that, you have a WrestleMania main event with 2 stars of this caliber. And even though people were still rejecting Roman Reigns, he still was a star at this point, not quite like what he is now, but he still had cemented himself as, a main event level caliber guy. And to hear the fans rejecting it that much again, as we had just seen this rejected with Roman Reigns for the 3 years prior, and they keep going back to the well. You just had to think like, oh my God, they're going to do it again. And just like 2 years ago against Triple H, he's going to walk out with the championship. And just like last year against The Undertaker, the crowd is going to go home and close WrestleMania booing. And I think they just could not have a hat trick of matches go down like that in a row to close out WrestleMania. Like 3 consecutive years of the crowd going home pissed off. I don't know if WWE could have sustained that blow. But sure enough, they make the decision, which was, maybe not the right decision, because maybe Brock ending the show as champion for another year, walking with the Universal Championship and continuing his year-long reign. I don't think that's, what the crowd was dreaming for, but it was the best of a bad situation and the lesser of two evils in this particular instance. And then they didn't go away from this program at all for the following 6 months or so. They went to Saudi Arabia and they had the cage match, and Brock Lesnar retains yet again. And it ultimately leads to them heading towards SummerSlam to headline yet again another pay-per-view for the Universal Championship. And like I talked about last week when I reviewed the career of Braun Strowman, this was a program and a part of their feud that featured Braun Strowman a lot, because he had just won the 2018 Money in the Bank contract. So when we got to SummerSlam, we knew that Braun Strowman was going to be playing a factor. But we were thinking back in our head, like, could Brock Lesnar continue to be champion and get one up Roman Reigns yet again? And by the time Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar got to the main event to close out the biggest party of the summer, we got our answer.
Trying to destroy one another inside the ring. Yeah, for the Universal Championship. Lesnar now looking for an F5 perhaps. This is going to do it. Shoulder. Roman Reigns though. Here comes Roman. Suicide dive. Brock sidestep. Roman took out Strowman. It's completely unintentional by Reigns, but what a brilliant ploy by the Beast.
Yeah, clearly Braun Strowman did not see that coming.
I don't know.
Whoa, turn around, turn around!
Oh, and now Lesnar! Oh my God! Lesnar poking the monster with an F5 to Strowman outside the ring, and that's one way to take Strowman out of the equation. Lesnar is smiling.
Brock loves it. Smart move. You soften up Braun Strowman while you're taking care of Roman Reigns. Not many people can do that.
And Brock, as Corey mentioned, a huge grin on his face as now he looks to drag Reigns back in the ring, put Roman Reigns away as Strowman is still suffering the effects of the F5. And now Braun Strowman, though, grabbing the ankle of Brock Lesnar, and Brock now with the contract inside the briefcase, using the briefcase as a weapon, and now slinging it a long way away.
Did that just knock out?
Oh, a chair! And Lesnar with a chair, assaulting Strowman. The monster in the bank might regret trying to make his withdrawal tonight. I guess that's one way to make sure that the contract's not cashed in.
You can respect the face-to-face, but right now it's the chair to back.
He almost threw the contract over the East River. And now back into the ring. Brock Lesnar in a mood tonight. A vile and vicious mood. And Reigns to the champion. Here's the cover. Hook of the leg. Reigns did it. Roman Reigns did it. Reigns is the champion.
Here's your winner, and the new Universal Champion, Roman Reigns.
So after 2 years, 2 full calendar years, they finally pulled the trigger and put the championship back on Roman Reigns, and it was his first win for the Universal Championship, because up until this point he had only held the WWE Championship. So it was a massive victory for Roman Reigns. He finally gets over the hump and takes out a guy that he had just not been able to beat in Brock Lesnar, and becomes the champion yet again. And as you heard, Braun Strowman was standing out by ringside, got caught up with Roman Reigns when Roman Reigns missed his spear and went to the outside. Brock takes exception, beats the hell out of Braun Strowman, and then as he gets back in the ring, Roman Reigns hits the spear to secure what is arguably was at that point the biggest championship win in his career. And not just 2 months later, he was forced to relinquish the championship due to his diagnosis with leukemia, and the belt was subsequently put back on Brock Lesnar, which he held all the way until WrestleMania 35, when he dropped it to Seth Rollins, and then he won it back, and we don't have to go on a big deep dive of all the championships that Brock Lesnar has held since the summer of 2018. But this victory really put a bow on the rivalry between Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns, which started in early 2015 and only truly culminated in the summer of 2018. And in a lot of ways, you could say that Brock Lesnar is the biggest rivalry that Roman Reigns has had to date. Because, maybe that rivalry is still yet to come, with him being this amazing heel run that he's been on for about 10 months now. Perhaps that's John Cena as we head into SummerSlam season. But to this point, even with his heel run being so much better than his babyface run, I think that Brock Lesnar has been his biggest rival and best rival. And you could make the case that Roman Reigns has been that for Brock as well, because, his one with Drew, the most recent one, was very forgettable, and maybe we just didn't get to see the maximum capability of that because of the pandemic, but it wasn't his best. His one with Seth Rollins was pretty damn good, and before this, it was Triple H, The Undertaker. So, you know what? You could truly make the case that in his new run with the company since 2012, obviously not in his initial run, where I think we could all agree it was bar none Kurt Angle. But in his most recent run since 2012, you could very well make the case that Brock Lesnar's biggest rival has been Roman Reigns. And who knows, with Paul Heyman being the common denominator between the two, maybe another installment is still yet to come, with maybe Brock Lesnar playing the babyface this time around, or heel versus heel, or let it be. We have seen enough Brock versus Roman Reigns in the last 5 or 6 years. So maybe I gotta be careful what I wish for. But look, guys, that's all I got for you tonight. As always, you can catch me on Twitter at ADemarco25. You can get Matt on Twitter at wrestling_audio, or email him at realwwepodcast@gmail.com. And be sure to catch our What If segment that is dropping tomorrow morning, as this one is dropping late Friday night. So a double dose of me for you guys, and I hope you're all safe out there. And as always, I'll talk to you next week.